Leticia Galeazzi, Senior Civil Engineer.
Ryan Leonard, Police Department.
Okay. Nope, now it's you.
Okay, so we'll now move on to public comments. Make comments at the time on something that isn't on the agenda. If we wish to make comments on something on the agenda, but as we go through them.
Did you receive any public comment?
Any email?
I did not, and I do have Ryan McLean's emails all coming to me, so anybody that might have emailed him, I did not receive anything.
So we move now to item 4, which is the approval of the minutes of the meeting of March the 4th. Are there any changes requested or errors to be corrected that anyone has noticed?
I have one error on item 5, the second paragraph. I was promoted to chair, I see. But at the beginning of the second paragraph, it says Chair Maxwell.
Oh,
Congratulations.
I'll correct that.
Did you want that or
is this a power move?
I don't know.
Sorry,
Richard. I was wondering.
I'll replace chair with commissioner.
That was wonderful. Thank you.
Are there any other comments or corrections anybody wants to make?
Everything looks fine.
Okay, can we ask for a promoter, please?
I move minutes be approved.
I second.
Can we take a vote? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, minutes approved. So we can move without further delay on to item 5, appointment of a subcommittee to draft an annual Traffic Safety Commission report to the council.
So I want to talk about that for a hot second before I turn it back over to the chair. It is within the bylaws and the city ordinance that once a year annually, someone from the commission would provide an annual report to our city council. I don't believe that's happened in several years. However, I think what would be appropriate would be for you to vote for a subcommittee, and then you would put together your annual report. When it was done, you would bring it back to the board. You guys would review it and then approve the contents, and then it would be the chair or your designee who would present it to a city council. So if you think it's appropriate and you want to discuss it, you could talk about putting together a subcommittee to start moving that process forward. I know that's something that you are all interested in doing.
Chair, can we discuss this
Yes,
first?
yes, sure. Could I just, I did just briefly copy out what I sent to Ryan before he left, just at the beginning of the year, which was my first draft suggestions, and they're absolutely suggestions, all open to discussion of what the content could be. And it was based on sort of reviewing the minutes for the previous year. So if I could. Did all that. Oh, I think I've got enough, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So the first page is just a sort of contents list in a way, which is my first, and then the following pages are my suggestions of the skeletal of what the contents may be, what everyone's commenting on, and further suggestions and modification. So that was my sort of step to kick off the process of getting the drafting of the report going. I wasn't intending to go through every line item or anything like that. That was just, and I assume it's the committee will take that forward.
So if I were to read the ordinance, I believe that your annual report is a discussion and a recap of all of the items that came before the board this year and decisions that were made and things that were made. I don't know that we want to move forward with future projects or things like that in the annual report, in that we wouldn't want to conflict with other documents that are in place that are driving those projects forward. So for example, we'll talk about the Bike and Ped program, right? The Bike and Ped program has very specific ways we're moving projects forward, and it's married to our CIP. And we join our funds up that way. So we wouldn't want a document that said, oh, I know that this is a really important project to the Bike and Ped program, but we think this is a better project. I think where the report could go would be something along the lines of, we met with city staff, they reviewed the CIP with us, we had the opportunity to see the projects they were bringing forward, because that is actually the time where you would say, hey, what about this project, right? Not necessarily after the fact, right? I think you'd want to put in the annual report that you provided your input and your feedback on the CIP projects. Do you see where I'm going with that?
Yes.
I just want to be mindful that like I explained to you the last time we spoke on this topic, you know, the city has a Bike and Ped program, the city has a capital improvement project, we have an ADA, an approved ADA transition plan, and those are all projects that move other projects forward, right? And they're all married to each other. So we just want to be mindful that it would be totally appropriate for the board to say, oh gosh, this horrible thing happened at this intersection, and I think we should include a project there, right? And then try to get that included in the CIP, so to speak, right? But not have a contradictory document. I want to make sure we're focusing our attention on changing policy in front of the policy, not kind of after the fact. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I think, I know that your fourth person isn't here, and he was interested,
Robert, yeah.
Robert, on being on the subcommittee. I just don't know, is this something you want to vote on tonight, or do you want to think about it amongst yourselves and have a discussion and then do it at the next meeting? So if Robert's here, he can decide if he wants to be on the because you can have 3.
I would like to discuss the composition of the committee, if that's okay with.
Of course.
So the municipal code I've been doing a lot of diving into it, and actually, you know, and you brought up right at the beginning of the meeting that there's 3 members of the staff that are on this commission. It says it right there. So I guess the question I have is if we have a subcommittee, I think, and there's other questions I have regarding this, but as far as being, I don't know if we're us 3 or 4 voting members or all of voting members, but we've never seen votes come from this side before. Yes, and that's good. So my question is, if we were to have the composition of a subcommittee, I think it should be represented and not just, you know, because I was thinking about the 4. It's always like, well, you know, 3 of the 4, that doesn't make sense. But then in reading this, I think it would make sense to have a representative subcommittee that has some appointed ones from the city and also at large.
I'm gonna disagree with you because I don't know that any of the rest of us would have the same time and input that you have to be on this subcommittee. I think it's more appropriate that you make up your subcommittee and then we bring it to the group to discuss it.
Well, then I wouldn't agree, because I think if you have 3 of the 4 on this subcommittee, I mean, why not just have it in the public? It's just, I mean, if we had more commissioners that were, if the table had 7 rather, or 5 at least, I think that would make sense. And that's more what I'm used to. But if you have 3/4 of the subcommittee is sitting on a subcommittee, why not just have it? at a commission
I'm
meeting?
sorry, Steve, I'm not understanding your point.
I don't think it makes sense to have 3 community members on this commission, on any subcommittee, when there's 4 total. I mean, it's almost like, why not just have them all, you know?
You can't have them all
Yeah, I know, well, because
now it's a Brown Act violation. You can't have it all.
then why don't we have somebody from the staff
Then you can certainly nominate them and they would be free to decline if they wanted to.
free to decline?
I think if I could add, in the Measure K, we appointed a subcommittee to do some of the detailed, and that subcommittee only had 2 people, and that's been the tradition that we had, because that committee has
9, I think. 8,
That many? I wasn't sure what that large.
maybe 7. I'd have to look it up.
I think 3 would have been, no, I think it's only 5, actually. So I think 3 would have been the quorum of the full committee. So I think that's why it was 2. And that worked quite well, having 2 people, what they did was they met with staff and came up with some findings and reported back to the full committee. But I think it was a Brown Act issue that we limited it to 2.
I checked with the city attorney and she said we could have 3
Okay,
because it was my understanding that at the last meeting, Robert also wanted to be on the subcommittee. So I did confirm with her that you could have 3.
okay. So if I may continue, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, if Robert's not here, then maybe we should at least wait to consult with him, see if he wants to be involved in preparing the draft. Yes, no?
Yes, I'm just a little afraid it's sort of moving on and on and on, you know, when the next meeting will be 1st of May, moving on from the year.
You don't, no, you don't have to have 3. You just can't have more than 3.
Right.
And so I don't know how to move you forward because at the last meeting, Robert did indicate in the meeting that he was interested in being on the commission. So
Could I suggest that, since I know the 2 of you have expressed interest in this, in fact, you've drafted this outline, that perhaps to move ahead, if I would suggest that the 2 of you be on the subcommittee, and then if the city attorney says we can expend that to 3, that at the next meeting, we could invite Robert to be the 3rd person.
I think you could vote to have a subcommittee of not more than 3. And then at the next meeting, name the 3rd person if you all wanted to vote the 2 of you in. If that was something that you were interested in. I'm sorry, I'm confused because at the last meeting, it seemed really clear that the 2 of you were interested in being on the subcommittee. So I think you could do that.
Okay.
You'd have to take a roll call vote to say 3, no more than 3 is subcommittee, no more than 3 to draft the annual report. And then you can decide at a later meeting after you accept the annual report, who you want Rich to bring it to council. And once the board has approved the annual report at a meeting, then we would schedule it for a city council meeting for you to make your presentation or someone on the board to make their presentation.
I was going to ask Brian how he felt about that. Were you keen to be on the subcommittee, Brian? You know, as I see you perhaps putting quite a lot of information into the report itself.
I'd be happy to participate in sharing information. I wouldn't volunteer myself for a subcommittee without city manager or the police chief's approval, though.
Okay, okay, that's fine. I just wanted to get your view on that. So, shall we take a vote on whether we start off with Steve and myself on the subcommittee? And
I think you want to make a motion to form a subcommittee for no more than 3,
right.
naming yourself and Steve if he's agreeable, with the 3rd person to be named at the next meeting. Paul, does that sound about right?
Yeah, maybe I should make the motion because you're the chair. So I would move that we establish a subcommittee of not to exceed 3 persons to draft the annual report to city council. And that at this meeting, we have appointed yourself and the vice chair, Steve, to be on that committee. There's a vacancy that we will discuss filling at the next meeting.
Keeping it like that, I'm okay with. I still think it doesn't have to be a citizen member on the 3rd one. if you should happen to find that something that might be interesting, or one of the others on this committee might find this, or commission might find it interesting, that would be okay. I mean, to me, I think that's really, it's more the spirit of what's in the code.
And I think the sense, I mean, your question to Brian, I'm assuming that Brian would be more than accommodating in terms of providing information that we would need. I just sense this reluctance on the part of staff to officially be part of that subcommittee. But again, just not to harp on about the Measure K committee, but our subcommittee met with Ann and with the chief financial officer and their staff, and they provided all the information that we asked for. So I see a similarity here where the subcommittee could request of Ann or Brian or whoever information that would be provided to the committee. It doesn't, to me, it doesn't preclude their involvement. We're sort of going on the record that we would expect the cooperation in providing information.
That's actually how I see it.
Anyway,
Frankly, I'm unfamiliar with how these commissions work.
We understand the position you're in. We
Yeah,
appreciate
So
that.
that's why, like I said, I would defer
Check with the
to
boss.
the city manager and the police chief and Ann's direction as well on these things. They're far more familiar with the involvement of middle management
Right.
in this type of commission.
It's just.
But we would certainly provide any information that was asked of us.
I didn't want you to feel, that you weren't taking part in this at all if that didn't happen that way. So, because we need your information, quite vitally for the report to be meaningful, I think. And that's my-
And there may be a person at the police department better qualified than I am to give that information in a timely
Right.
manner.
But you would sort of manage the process from your side.
Correct.
From that, yeah. I think that sounds very good.
so do we need to take a vote on that?
Yeah.
Do we all vote, or do we just vote? I mean,
Okay, could ask them to vote. But I moved that.
Right.
Is there a second for that? I guess would be the next thing.
I would second that. Are we all in favor?
Aye.
I'll say aye. If
thank
you'd
you.
like me to vote Steve, I'll say aye.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That's.
You want me to vote?
Absolutely.
I'm in favor of that.
This is the first time I've seen that on this commission.
You only need 4 votes, Steve.
I've never seen it. I've never seen this side vote before, though.
I guess my point is you only actually need 4 votes. So typically we wouldn't chime in if you all voted yes.
And may I ask the chair, is there a sense of timing for this? Do you have a target month that you'd be,
I think I'd like to see it out within a couple of months.
okay, that's fast, okay.
Otherwise it's sort of, we're getting well into 2025, then it seems a bit sort of bizarre to be producing.
So it's April, May, June, July. So if we said we were going to target an August city council meeting, does that seem acceptable to you?
Oh, yes. Well, hopefully, we
Okay.
can do it sooner if possible.
Yes. Sorry, what was that date you said?
I don't know what the date is. I'm just
Oh.
picking a month, right? If we were going to target an August council meeting. Does that seem acceptable?
Yeah.
Okay. Given it's summer, people are going on vacation, things like that. Does that
Yeah.
give you, no, I'm just being honest, right? Like, does that give you enough time to do what you have outlined in your mind? Okay, great. So as we get closer and you want to shift the timeline, once you're ready as a committee to bring it forward, to have it approved by you all, then we'll set a date with council. And Claire, correct me if I'm wrong, August, there's only 1 meeting? So if it's not the end of July, it might be the first meeting in September based on, typically that's the month where our city council cancels 1 meeting because everybody goes on vacation. I don't know what that looks like yet. They haven't given me that information. I can't believe we're already talking about April.
Oh, and so I mean, you know all the procedure and everything. So do you see a formal staff report, or do you see more of just an annual report that's?
It's
given
going to be a
them?
memo to the city council.
Memo to the City council, okay.
And so whoever you decide to bring it forward, Rich, for this conversation, I'm going to say it's you as the chair would make the report. you would write a memo to the city council. We would upload it to their agenda and you would attach your report. And then when you go to give your presentation, you wouldn't necessarily read it line item for line item because they would have already read your report. You would just give a presentation on your report. And they might have questions, they might drill you down on something. And normally you would know the questions ahead of time. Like if they read your report and they had questions, I would not let you go in cold, not knowing that they're going to ask a question, give you a heads up about what it was.
I think the report would come back to the commission to vote on, right? Like Measure K?
Yeah,
before it goes
that's
to
what I
council.
said. They would bring it back to the board, yes,
Yeah.
and vote on it. And then once it was approved by everyone, you would bring it forward to council. But it's just a memo. And Paul's written a couple of those for Measure K, so he can give you some.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's
Input.
very analogous to what I just. The Measure K committee, I drafted the report. The Measure K committee reviewed it, made a couple of changes and approved, and then approved it.
Right.
And then that was put in the council packet. And I went to the meeting and summarized it, was available for questions. I had a
Right.
couple of, I think one of our committee members was there as well. So if there were questions, we were prepared to respond. Turns out there really weren't any. So but I think, and I went through this with the Measure K committee, I think it's really important that this committee approve the report that goes to council.
Oh, absolutely.
And there was a time when the Measure K committee historically hadn't done that. So I was
Right.
really insistent that as the chair of that committee, that the Measure K committee took a formal action on it. And I think it would be the same with this.
So do you think it's realistic if this came back to the traffic commission in July, we could take it to the council in August?
I think so, yeah, as long as
That would
it's,
be, yeah, okay, as long as we can.
Yeah,
It's
the,
not-
the dates would just have to line
Yeah,
up with.
I mean,
when
this is just,
Memos are
Yeah,
due
this
to
is
city
what we're
council.
shooting for, yeah.
Mhm.
Okay,
I
thank you.
mean, perhaps this year is a bit unique because it's the first time since I've been on the commission that this has been done. So maybe next year we might have it earlier.
yeah, you could adjust the timing however you want, but
Yeah.
you want to make sure you're giving them a good year's worth of
Of
data,
course.
right? So, you wouldn't want to take it in August and then go again in January, maybe,
Right.
right? So.
No.
But yes, I mean, there's nothing in the code that says when you have to take it, just,
Right.
and the only thing that might, Steve, push you off the beam is if for whatever reason, August was a very busy
That's life, yeah.
agenda where, we submit what we want to take to council and we get told yay or nay, right?
Yeah.
But it certainly
Priorities are
would,
priorities.
yeah. But there's no, unless it's a very heavy agenda, I can't imagine why it wouldn't be doable as long as, like Claire said, the dates line up. For example, if it's the first meeting in August, you might not make that date if only because of when you approve the meeting, right? But we'll make it, we'll get it on.
Appreciate that, thank you.
Okay, are we all content on that one?
Yes,
Yes.
thank you.
Okay, so there's no public here to comment. So we're moving on to item 5, item 6, which is e-bike regulations.
Yeah, so at the last meeting, you may recall that there was some indication you guys wanted to pursue some e-bike regulations in the city. So I did talk with our chief of police and I sent you the code. I mean, it's already a law, whether people that are using the e-bikes are following the law or not. I don't know that there's much we can talk about with regard to the law. But the other topic that you all discussed was shared use on the trails. So I do want to remind everybody that in Pleasant Hill, we don't own any of the trails, right? We don't have authority on the trails.
Appreciate that, yeah.
But what would be totally appropriate is if you wanted to partner with East Bay Regional Parks or Contra Costa Water for their trails, Rec and Park, find out what their use is and how that can coordinate with what we're doing. That could be an avenue that you may wish to pursue. That was something I wanted to bring up since e-bikes was one of your topics.
Yes, perhaps I could just give you a little bit of background as to why
Of course.
I raised this issue in the first place. Of course. And some of these figures are preliminary because I got them through AI. So, Well, they always need validation before you can take them. But apparently the statistics show nationally that the accident rate on e-bikes from 2017 to 2022 doubled every year. And it started off about 750 in 2017. And in 2022, it was 23,500. So that's a 31 times increase, or 31,000%, whereas the ownership has actually gone up only by about a third of that. So it looks like there's sort of more accidents per e-bike owned, which to me suggests they're getting more frequent and they happen more often. And I don't know what everybody else's driver's view is, but I've seen some unbelievable things from e-bikes. So I thought it would be a good idea for us to just review that and see how Pleasant Hill sits on that and what we have in place, and whether we all think it's adequate and whether there's anything else we can do to improve the situation. Because in my view, talking about accidents, preventative is 10 times better than retrospective, measures that we might take to try and fix something when there's already been an accident. So I was going to suggest we added that to that's something we could look at. And I know there's various of us who have time to do the research and the background into that and present to the commission, and perhaps we could discuss it.
If you're looking for something specific about e-bikes, our accident collision reporting is not subcategorized by whether it was an e-bike or not. We would have to, our records personnel would have to manually go through each of the collision reports for the month or year, whatever the time frame we're looking at is, and review them to determine that. We could set flags going forward, but to do it retroactively would be a challenge. Not impossible, but it would be a challenge to do.
You mean just the accident data or other things about the e-bikes? Because there's different classes of e-bikes. Some of those go really fast and there are on the trails, but they're also on major streets like Pleasant Hill Road. I've seen them on Taylor and they're like right with the cars, so I don't know. You don't need a special license for them or anything like that.
Correct. And that's what I mean, that when we take collision reports, it will say if it was a bicycle or a vehicle or, whatever
Right.
type of vehicle category it is. But there's no way that I'm aware of to filter out to only look at e-bikes, because there's not even really a standardized definition of, like you said, of exactly what an e-bike is. Some of them are battery powered and very low energy. They're just meant to assist in your, in your pedaling. And some of them are essentially electric motorcycles that are, almost as powerful. So.
I understand there's category 1, 2, and 3.
Yes.
But, and the faster ones are the category 3 or category 2. Anyway, their maximum speed, which I think you let me know, is 28 miles an hour, isn't it? But I think the others are 20 miles an hour, the pedal assisted ones, and they can go on the trails, but I gather the higher powered ones cannot. Is that the case?
That sounds accurate, but I can't say for certain.
No, I
And
can't.
Like Ann said,
Which
I'm
is
not
why
even,
I'd like
I'm not sure what East Bay Parks or Park and Recs,
It just says no motorized vehicles. That's
So I guess that's what I was suggesting a good starting point might be, right? Gathering the data that we could from our
Indeed.
trail partners.
Yeah.
And then if you thought it was appropriate, Brian, maybe we could ask PD to start, if it was an e-bike, flagging it somehow, so we could bring those statistics before the board
yeah, that would be possible.
moving forward. Does that sound like a good starting point?
Yep.
Great. So for me, in Pleasant Hill, we have East Bay Regional Parks, we have Contra Costa Water District that has some trails. I think we have Brecken Park that has some trails.
yes.
And as far as I know, and again, motorized vehicles aren't allowed on any of them. We don't actually own ourselves any trails, so I don't have any data.
I didn't know that. I thought you were responsible for those as well.
No, we don't. And so that's what I was gonna say is I don't have any data that I can bring forward on that topic about what happens on the trails because we don't own them or regulate them. So that was why I suggested that it might be a good starting point
Yes,
to
absolutely.
see what people allow, what they don't allow, and where are we at.
I thought that was a very good suggestion.
Okay?
I think that the streets too, there's on-street bike lanes, and I don't know if they're supposed to be in the bike lanes or they're supposed to be. with the
I don't
vehicles.
actually know that either.
Yeah.
Do
We'll find
you
out.
know, Brian? I'm class 3. Are they supposed to be on the road or can be in the bike lane?
I'd have to look up that information about bike class, whether or not they're allowed in bike lanes or, I know in most roadways, bikes are supposed to function the same way that a motor vehicle does.
Okay.
But in the areas that have bike lanes, I'm not positive if they're permitted in there or not.
And then I do know that several years ago, we tried to bring an e-bike program to the city of Pleasant Hill and it failed miserably. And so we canceled our we don't have, what? The scooters, not bikes, the scooters. And there's just not the usage, right? Nobody, really, the scooters are to get people from point A to point B with a good transition point, like from here to BART and from BART to another hub. And we don't have enough of those hubs to make it anything more than kids just riding them around town, so to speak. So we haven't had a contract for e-bikes or e-scooters in the city for at least 3 years now. We canceled our contract.
Don't get me wrong, I think they're a great idea, I think they're a perfect answer to sort of first mile, last mile type accessibility without emissions. And so I think they're a great idea, but I'm raising the flag basically because I think there's a lot of ignorance about what's allowed, what isn't allowed, what they can do, what they can't do, what speed. And I think it would be a good thing in terms of education to try and set this out so the public knew exactly where they stood. Basically, we're looking at self-enforcement, aren't we?
Well, and once,
Within, largely because driving behavior is all to do with that.
and this could be a good topic for this commission to sink their teeth into and then do public outreach via either the Outlook or a town hall meeting if you wanted to get people to come, that sort of thing when you get further down the line. Because you're right, there is a lot of ignorance around the topic.
So, Mr. Chair, the ultimate objective here is the initial objective is to educate ourselves about what's legal, what's possible, what the rules are. Just to clarify that
Yes.
for us and for staff and then perhaps the general public.
Correct.
So it's really trying to figure out what is permitted. And that itself, I guess, could be an article for the Outlook magazine. But at the moment, this is,
You're reading my mind.
we're educating ourselves.
Correct.
We're not necessarily looking at accidents per se.
regulating, yeah.
We're trying to know what's legal, what isn't, what's permitted. What are the regulations for East Bay Parks versus the Water District? Okay, all right.
That's a sort
And
of
even the city,
long-term
for that
end
matter.
end objective. And I think that's a very good way of trying to ensure that we minimize any sort of accident potential that comes from this.
If I just, on this topic, since you brought it up, man, the city had a contract for scooters at some point, e-scooters.
2022-ish?
And what was the experience?
Was
I
it-
used
so-
to see them lying around, but.
Well, so we had a lot of concerns about e-scooters or e-bikes, and a lot of it had to do with what happens if it just gets left somewhere?
Yeah.
So my son is riding his scooter and he leaves it in front of Steve's house and Steve is not happy. Then the question becomes, well, who's going to pick it up? And if it's me that goes and picks it up, where am I keeping it? And how long do you have to come back and pick it up? There's all sorts of implications that went along with the scooters, aside from the actual just driving of the scooters. And so one of the things that the city required was that, do you remember the name of the company? Was it Lime? Bird scooters.
Well, green, I remember, right?
Yeah, that's why I said Lime, but it's Bird.
It's good.
But one of the requirements we had was there had to be a project manager dedicated to Pleasant Hill. So if we had any problems, we had a direct contact that we could go to at any time. And they could not fill that role. We had like 2 or 3 people. We started a pilot program where we started out with a certain number of scooters, Brian, right? Like maybe 50?
Yeah, it was a few dozen.
Yeah, I can't remember how many. And it just didn't go well. It didn't take off. It wasn't being used as intended. And there was a lot of liability
Yeah.
for leaving scooters on people's private property, leaving them here, leaving them there.
Put them on the street.
And so once they couldn't fill that role with a person dedicated to Pleasant Hill to be the go-to person, I think they just ended up saying, we can't staff what you're looking for. But I think really underneath it all, we don't really have the interest we're not when I say Berkeley, I'm thinking of places where you go from here to there
Well, there's a track.
and you
there's
transition
traction
your
points.
scooter, right? Like I'm going to go from here to there, leave my scooter, and then somebody's waiting for my scooter to go from there to there. We don't have that same type of trajectory in Pleasant Hill. Maybe BART.
Eh,
I'm just saying, that's about the only place I can think of where it'd be used necessarily as intended and not just a joyride around Pleasant Hill, so to speak, right?
that makes
Um,
sense. Makes sense.
So that was, we tried though.
Maybe one day.
And to be honest, I'm actually kind of glad you can't take them down the trail. Because then you'd be finding kids all over the place. Your 11-year-old is in Berkeley, right?
I think other cities had that problem, didn't they? That there was a lot of complaints because they were left all over the
Yes.
place and littered the footways, pathways, and it in fact, became a complete nuisance effectively.
Well, and that's one thing we didn't want here is to be upsetting our residents with a policy we put in place, something we put in place by leaving bikes everywhere, right? Where people are just losing their minds because there's e-bikes all over or scooters, right? Because we had scooters, we didn't have the bikes.
No
Yeah.
bikes, just scooters.
But I do have actually 3 staff members who have the pedal motorbike and they ride them to work every day and they love them.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, we'd love to hear their experience. 'cause
Yeah.
that's-
Right. I mean,
Yeah.
They serve a purpose.
but they all live in Pleasant Hill and only come to Pleasant Hill, right? They're not biking from Berkeley, right?
They're not
They're local,
from Dublin or
right,
Sacramento.
They did a class 3.
right.
Okay.
Public comment?
Anybody else something? Bring on that?
That's great. Good information.
Okay, perhaps we can now move on then to number 7, which is police department update. So perhaps I could hand over to Brian.
Sure. So I was able to pull kind of some raw data for March of 2025 collisions within the city. And then if the committee wants to give me some direction on specifics of what they'd like to see in the future, I can aggregate that information a little bit better. But for the month of March, we had 57 reported collisions within the city of Pleasant Hill. Of those, 4 were involved injuries to one of the drivers or one of the involved parties. 10 occurred on private property. And of those 57, 28 of those resulted in police investigations. And the difference between the overall 57 number and the 28 reported, the police department generally will not take an investigative report for non-injury, very minor damage collisions. So someone rear ends the other person in traffic and there's a license plate bent or barely any damage to the bumper. For the most part, neither party wants the insurance companies involved in that or DMV to have a reportable collision on there. So that takes up about half of the collisions we take that people do not want reports taken in those matters. If the committee wanted something more specific about locations or collision factors, that's not available to me right now, but it's something that in future months, if that's what you wanted, we could aggregate that data a little bit differently.
I'd like to see that in the future, if possible.
Yeah, I think the location thing is very critical, because we can sort of look at sort of a black spot type analysis to see if there's areas where constantly things are happening, and that may be a lead in to taking some remedial action or something like that.
Sure. And from the list that I have, I mean, the vast number of them are on our arterial roadways, your Contra Costa, Monument, Oak Park, Taylor, Chilpancingo, those types of roadways that are, have higher volume of traffic. We rarely have reportable collisions that are happening within the neighborhoods. But we can drill down on that information a little bit better for the May meeting, and I can give you some locations and have some printouts or something like that available for you.
That would be very good. I mean, I think you're quite right with, arterials with major
Mhm.
economic activity such as retail and the rest of it are always the worst sources of accident because there's so much activity going on.
Mhm.
I would think it would be of value, like we had 3 accidents at the same intersection and 15 at this intersection. Like, I think that would be something that the commission might be interested in biting down on to see why are there 15 here and only 1 over here? Is there something happening that there was 15 accidents at this one spot type of thing? I'm sorry, Paul, I saw you were going to say something.
I was gonna ask if the overall analysis of traffic accidents, isn't that something that the staff looks at on an annual basis?
Yes.
Didn't we doing some kind of, well, there was a safety report?
We
refresh
typically
my
do
memory.
it when we're doing, like I'm actually applying for a grant coming up pretty soon and they want all that traffic data, but that would be something that I would hire a consultant for and they would do a traffic accident study. How many trucks, how many cars, how many this, how many that at a specific location?
Over a long period of time.
Yes, it's usually over a year's period. I don't know that annually we do a report that you're talking about.
I think it was that study that I was.
But we have, typically whenever we apply for a grant, especially now for bike and ped grants, they always want to know the safety traffic data. How many cars per day? How many accidents have you had there? Have the accidents increased since the year before? So I would hire a traffic consultant, a small firm like Kimley Horn or Fair and Pierce to go out and do that traffic analysis for us so that we could put accurate data in our,
And that kind of
Grant.
data informs you as to where you need to make improvements in terms of traffic intersections or crosswalks.
okay, I'm gonna say, for the purpose of the grant, the data, you're saying it backwards.
I'm just saying, well, in general, when your department is putting the capital program together, I thought there was some way that you considered accidents as part of some of the measures to help prioritize where your improvements are going to be. I'm not articulating this.
So, yes, so if we were to talk about the crosswalk improvement project,
Uh-huh.
we did do a traffic study with warrants at every intersection to see what the most appropriate measures would be to fix whatever that individual situation was, right? So we would do that ahead of time. Okay, here's all the traffic information. Then we would give it to our design consultant and they would, in this case, it was traffic patterns on that project. And they would say, okay, so here at this intersection, and I'm making this up, I don't have the data in front of me. At this intersection, it wasn't that bad. So I think a speed hump and a crosswalk would be fine. But over here, there was this many more people and this many more cars, and there was a couple of accidents and somebody got hit on a bike. So we want da-da-da-da. So we would base whatever design we were doing on those improvements. So in that case, that was a very specific project that our council asked us to put forward around the schools. They were very interested in doing a capital project around the schools. For what you're talking about, we would look at our bike and safety bike and ped master plan, the capital improvement program. Are we doing any major complete streets projects like Contra Costa Boulevard? And we would focus our bike and ped improvements on the projects that we would pick, but we would be following basically the master guideline that we had. Now, having said that, right, everything can shift. Again, making this up. There's 15 accidents at Monument and Buskirk in the next year, and there's a big drive for us to do a safety project there that we haven't even thought about. We, of course, would shift, right? But we might still have to go do a traffic study to determine what the best improvements even would be to do there, right? So that, when I say we're all talking about the CIP when we're putting our projects together, this is where you guys' voice is, right? You're gonna look at that information that Brian's giving you. You're gonna look at what's happening in the city, look at the bike and ped plan, look at all these things and say, well, oh, wait, did you forget about this project? What do we think about this project? Right, but that document is very comprehensive, right? There's a policy in place for how we're addressing bike and ped at school, right? The safe routes to schools. So when we talk about getting a grant, oh, okay, well, the next project up is this area. And then we would look, what safe route to school grant is available for that? Ryan McLean, who just left, well, I'll tell you what project updates, but he was very passionate about that beacon project. So we do have that project coming up in the CIP where we're going to be putting flashing beacons in 4 different locations in the city. So we're always looking, using the guidelines that we have, input from the commission input from our council, input from our residents to drive those projects. But as a general guideline, we use the bike and ped plan, the ADA master plan, the CIP, right? And we're always looking for grants. So if we had the opportunity and got a big fat grant, we might pivot that year to meet the grant deadlines, right? Based on funding, resources, and all of that availability.
So if we are to make the commission is to make a recommendation, and you all think it's a good idea, at what point does that recommendation float itself up into the PED plan or the, the CIP or whatever?
So I wasn't here when Ryan did the bike and ped plan, but I'm assuming you saw it, right?
I'm just my own, you can disagree with me. I felt we saw it after the fact.
I don't know, because I wasn't.
Yeah, okay, but I'm just telling you, at
I
least
wasn't here
that's the
then.
way I saw it.
Well, you mean you didn't see it before it was approved? You didn't see it when it was a draft?
I think we did. I think we saw it and it went to planning commission, I think. And there were some changes, significant changes.
At the planning commission, there was some significant changes.
We did get to see the draft. and
Did we
approve
make
it.
recommendations?
Yes, no, we did. We did. And as I recall, it was on hold for quite a long time for some reason.
It was on hold because we were updating our general plan. So we weren't going to adopt the bike and ped until the new general plan was adopted because there were significant changes between the old general plan and the new general plan, how it related to bike and ped.
But to answer your question, I think it went to the planning commission. And I guess then to the council, it didn't come back to us for approval because I think
It was already going
moved
up,
on
yeah.
through the process. Claire's nodding, is that right? Is that what happened?
But I would like to believe if you guys felt passionate on a topic that Ryan heard you. And I wasn't here, but I have to assume that you guys saw it.
We did.
Okay, that makes me feel better.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, and it's the same with the CIP. I mean, you get input. You don't get to overrule the council or even the planning commission on the CIP, but we bring it to you. And I know I brought it to you guys and showed you what projects we were planning because I did it last year before we adopted the last CIP. Okay, so that is your spot to say, wait, what about this project?
Okay.
And either I'm going to say it got shut down because of XYZ, or, oh my gosh, you're right, we forgot to put that in there,
Okay.
type of thing. And when I say shut down, I'm not saying it the right way. Priorities have changed, or we're adding it to a different project for this reason, type of thing. But again, just wanting to be clear, we follow, very specific documents that are already in place for how we move forward through our projects. It's not just me and Claire going, hey, what do you think about this? Let's do this today. And that's for everything in the city, not just bike and ped. It's for street resurfacing, it's for storm drain projects. It's, the only thing that's a little more free-flowing on grant projects because we never know when grants are going to become available or if we're going to be successful in getting a grant. And so if we were to get, like, the CCB project was a huge project. We got the money back in 2017. Then when COVID hit, we got approved for the money. When COVID hit, the money was frozen. All right, so we pivoted and went to other projects. And then all of a sudden in 2021, they released the money, so we had to spend it within a certain time frame or lose it. So then we stopped to pivot to go over to there, right? So in those cases, yes, we would pivot that way.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Brian. That sounds very good, what you're suggesting. I think my overall view is that it's good to see what's coming and what's happening, sort of, again, looking at the preventative side and to see if there's anything we can do in terms of that. And we'll come on to the outlook in a minute, but I see it as very much doing it to try and influence driver behavior through education. Okay, everyone okay?
Mhm. Thank you.
No public comment?
Okay. Oop, I've fallen off the end of my thing. Okay, so the next item was the discussion on the Outlook article, which I think we've already gone into. But my reason for suggesting that was I felt that it was a good, I mean, some of the articles I saw, particularly that one on the parking, which I thought was really good because it explained very well why things were being done. And I think my own view is a lot of time the public don't understand why we do all these different sorts of things. And if they understood better the reason for it, maybe they would self-enforce even better. So I thought it would be a good idea perhaps to have a very small article initially just to sort of say what the commission does and what they hope to do in the future and try and bring them in a bit more.
Sure. So the outlook, we've missed the deadline for May, June, right? So you would be targeting the fall. So you have time to think through what you want to write, what you want to say, you know, and then I would have to, you'd send it to me, I'd send it to the city manager for approval, and then he would tell our PIO to put it in the outlook. But I don't see any reason why that's not doable. I also like the whole e-bike article, to be honest.
And again, I would see it as very much a combined team effort on that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so the next item is Traffic Safety Commission role and responsibility. And you know, I thought maybe it was just a good idea, just bring new members, things like that,
Sure.
just to rehearse again what the responsibilities and how it all should work properly.
So again, I haven't been on this commission for very long, and I only have the ones that I am on to go by. And Paul can attest to this. When we get a new commission member, either myself or the other staff person would, what we call it, onboard them, right? With Debbie Baker, I met her for coffee. We talked about her roles, what we did, the whole bit. But I guess I understand from talking to Ryan that that didn't happen with this commission. So I went through as many records as I could find, and I did find one document that was drafted in 2023 for the Traffic Safety Committee's policies. So I'm just going to read them so that we're all on the same page, and it's nothing earth-shattering, right? One public hearing date, second Tuesday, 4 o'clock in the community room each month. You, of course, can change that day based on availability or whatever, vacations or anything like that, but it is a once-a-month commission. You can hold an additional meeting at any time if you have a majority vote of the committee or at the request of the city council. Right? So again, huge accident at Monument in Buskirk. Council wants you guys to dig deep. They can direct you to go ahead and have an extra meeting if they would want you to, right? Site or field inspections may be held upon a call of a majority of the vote, subject to legal notice. I understand from Ryan that that used to happen. You guys would go out in the field and look at things. Paul, do you recall that? I could chat with Ryan and find out more what that was about, but if you wanted to take a field trip and go look at things in the field, that is totally in your purview. You come back, you discuss it at the meeting, whatever the incident was. And so, for example, Brian's going to come here and tell you that there were 15 accidents at Monument in Buskirk. You might want to take a field trip and go look and see why you think there might be, what's happening there, what might help, what could be appropriate, right? We're not just, you know, roaming around. We're not going out for any small thing, but a majority vote, you could set a field trip. Ryan McLean did tell me that when he was on the commission, that did in fact used to happen. So the committee at its first meeting in April, and it didn't happen, so they'll have to happen next month, shall elect the chairman and the vice chair. So when did you, I don't know this, when did you get elected?
I'm sorry.
When were you elected as the chair?
I can't remember.
Has it been more than a year?
I think it was about a year ago, wasn't it?
Maybe a little less.
I don't know, because again, I wasn't here, but it's a yearly position. So it says on this paperwork that the chair and the vice chair get elected in April. We should probably set that for the calendar unless it hasn't been a year. So we'll look back and see when you were nominated and then we'll
I
set
don't
that.
think it's been a year.
I don't know. I have to go back and look.
8 months, I believe.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure.
And it doesn't have to be April, but it is a yearly when you vote. So whatever that year was, we'll put it on the next meeting for a vote. Okay. The chairman presides at all meetings of the committee, sees that all actions of the committee are properly taken. Steve, are you the vice chair?
Yes.
Okay. So during the absence of the chair, the vice chair shall exercise or perform all the duties of the chairman. Should both the chair and the vice chair be absent or unable to act, Paul, you're in charge. Not even a smile. There's not even a smile out there. No, it says those members present shall have an order entered into the record selecting someone to run the meeting, right? So if you two are both absent, the rest of us would vote somebody in. There's a record secretary, which is the staff liaison, who's also custodian of the records. And we would inform the committee of correspondence relating to any business that should come before the commission. Matters referred to the committee by the city council shall be placed on the calendar for consideration and action at the first meeting after they ask us to do something. Okay, so if the council gives us any clear direction, we would have to put it on the agenda to have a conversation about how to move that forward. A majority of members of the committee entitled to vote are a quorum. So we make up your quorum. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to have a meeting.
And I honestly, I don't mean to argue this point, but I guess when it comes to what, I don't see anywhere that it distinguishes the citizens from the members in the code. It just-
I don't either.
And it's so, we're part of, that's why there's so many of us on this, is having 7 on this makes sense when you have the 4. I get that. And so, I mean, we should never have an issue, I think, with a quorum.
I don't disagree.
So I think we're on the same page.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I'm just saying that with Robert not here, we're still a quorum because Brian and I are both. And I did actually ask, the code is silent on the fact that the staff members can vote or not vote. I asked that question directly. There's nothing that
Other than
says,
Voting period.
yeah,
So that's kind of, and that's another point, but I'll bring that up when you're done.
okay. Reconsideration of any decision of the committee may be held when the interested party makes a showing satisfactory to the chair. So if you don't like a vote, you can bring it back up. If you're satisfied that the reason that they're bringing it back up makes sense to you. So the following procedures will be observed. Staff presents reports, makes recommendations. The committee may ask questions regarding the staff presentation. Any proponents make a presentation. Opponents make presentations, and then we review all the material at hand. Voting shall be by verbal vote. Any member of the committee who believes they have a conflict has to excuse themselves, vacate the seat, and they can't discuss the item. So it's very clear you can vote, right? It's a voting thing. No member may serve more than 2 full consecutive terms as the chair. So if this was your first year, you could be voted in again,
Just like our president.
right? And the vice chair shall succeed the chairman if the position is vacated before the term is completed. So when I look at the code, you have some discretion to look at matters, traffic accidents, the bike and ped plan, the CIP, things that are of interest to the commission, the e-bike program, writing articles for the Outlook, things that you think are appropriate to bring forward. Things that, you don't get to have the final vote on the CIP. You don't get to overrule. No, I'm just telling you it as the research that I did. We don't get to overrule the city council on things they want us to move forward working on. So you bringing your report forward, I think, is a good first step to getting back in front of the council.
Is it okay, though, for us to develop the report? Because you said that staff prepares the report.
No. This is different. When it says staff, I'm talking about things like the report. If somebody writes in and they say, the housing development down on Grayson, right? Ryan would come prepared with a report to present to you guys about what they wanted to talk about, not this report that you guys just voted. It's very clear in the code that the committee makes the annual report.
Yeah.
Does that give you a little bit of clarity? Yes? You sure? No, I mean, I think that I did a lot of digging because I wasn't exactly sure myself. It's the first time I've been on this commission, but I think with Brian bringing a report, the topics that you've brought up, I think it's totally makes sense that you continue to bring topics up that you want to look at and discuss. We talk it through. You guys decide that's a course of action you want to move forward on. And I think that gives you some meat of things to work on. Okay?
Yep.
Anything else?
Well, I don't know if this is the time to talk about the code, but I do want to eventually either talk about it now or agendize it, because I think the code is, I have copies of the code if anybody wants them, but
I've read the code front to back.
well, I
and
want
so-
everyone to see it. Because this code has information in it that I think needs to be refreshed.
Well, now you're talking about doing an ordinance change that would have to go before the city manager.
I understand.
So if you want to propose that, you certainly can.
Can we agendize that
That's
for a
not-
subsequent meeting?
I mean, that's, yes, I
Yeah.
mean, I think there's some pretty simple fixes in there, and there's a few things that need to be discussed, and
But you
Let's talk
think
about
that,
it.
Steve, the council and the city council and our city manager might not. That's why I'm suggesting you come up with your proposals of what you would like to have changed in the code.
on my own,
Well, I'm not exactly sure what
we're in
you,
a public, this is a public forum, and I thought, I don't know if the others have looked at this, but when I looked at it, I spent a lot of time on it too. And there's things that are pretty obvious that just need to be updated, and there's other things that I think are contradictory to what we were talking about right now.
okay, then I guess we can agendize it for next month and you can bring it forward for you guys to discuss.
That'll be fine. And I do think everybody on the commission, all 7 members should have copies of this, which I do have.
Well, I think,
It's
the
all
code.
available online, Steve. They can just look it up online, right? The code is right there.
I made the copies. I mean,
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, I'm just.
well, sorry.
What's that?
I think if we agendize it for our next meeting, then presumably the packet will contain
Okay,
the code as it stands. And also if at that meeting, if you have some specific recommendations to amend it, that
Okay.
could be handed out at the meeting. I mean, I think that's the process that you would go through.
okay, that's fine.
You know, and perhaps at the next meeting, once you've had a chance to read the code, some other members of the committee might have some suggestions as well. I mean, that's just how we
Absolutely,
do this.
absolutely.
Well, and then you're going to have to vote on it if you're going to make a recommendation to the council that you
Which
want to.
We'd
that you
we'd
want
vote on
to-
a recommendation, and if the council could choose to accept it or not. I mean, that's
Absolutely.
their role.
They could also make their own recommendations for changes they would like to see.
Right, exactly.
With the main approval body, sure. Sure.
That's, yeah. You know, one thing I wanted to point out about the roles and responsibilities, the largest issue I think that we have dealt with that was controversial about our role was reviewing the development proposals for their traffic impact. And we went round and round on this, on a specific development that was occurring. And I think that the conclusion from staff was, and I think from the city attorney too, was that the planning commission is responsible for doing for weighing the impact of a development on traffic. And some of us on the commission at one point wanted to have a chance to review that and weigh in. And I think the recommendation was that wasn't the role of this committee.
And I would agree with what you just said. That's my interpretation of what I know. For every planning project, the developer is required to have a traffic consultant do the traffic study that goes before the planning commission, they're traffic experts.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm just pointing out that was an issue.
Yeah, no, I do remember that from Ryan.
And I think we had a chance to review this. I think the traffic impact studies were brought to us for our information. But we didn't weigh in on whether or not the development was a go or no go because of the traffic. That was clearly not the purview of this group.
That's a good
I
point.
I think it's double taking.
I'm sorry.
I think it's a double issue there,
Anyway,
It's always, I've often found that when people complain about traffic issues from a development, they're actually complaining about the development, because usually the amount of traffic additionally added to the road by the development is minuscule. But
I think that people get used to having empty space
Yep.
next to their house and change is hard.
That's what I think too. And I think the two things get tied up and confused and they're not the same to me.
Yeah.
And if you have one body doing an assessment like that, which we all know is pretty comprehensive, then
I think that from the planning commission perspective is that the developer is paying for a consultant who are all traffic experts to do all the data. And so bringing the information to the commission makes sense to me. But unless we were a panel of 7 traffic experts with equal credentials, we would be hard pressed to change that direction, right? Where the city they have to have traffic data from a hired consultant. It's not staff that's doing these reports. They hire outside traffic consultants. I wasn't here when that conversation happened with the board. That's just my 2 cents on the topic.
And does, so for example, a traffic impact analysis, so does the planning commission certify the traffic study by resolution?
Well, I would assume yes by the time that they've accepted the project, right? They don't just do it individually, no.
Sometimes they'll certify the error, sometimes the technical studies get certified too. So I was wondering, I mean, planning commission, they look like they just approve all land use, which the traffic study is considered part of land use, I guess.
The planning commission would approve the entitlement of the entire project, and that would include the traffic study, yes.
which will include the transportation element.
Correct. Yes.
Okay, is that? any more? Right. Okay, let's move on to the next one, which is project updates. So I'll hand over to City.
So the Contra Costa Boulevard project is probably 95% complete. They're going to be finishing up irrigation and they are going to stand the light poles. I don't know if you guys have seen it, but the light poles are going in a slightly different location than the old light poles. So the new light poles can go up, get energized, and then take the old ones down without losing any light along that corridor. So that is a good thing. We got the date from PG&E on when they're going to run the wire to energize the poles, and that is May 1st. After they energize the poles, then PG&E will have to come out and set the meter. We do not have a date for that yet. And once the meter is set, then we'll work with the county to energize the traffic signals. In the meantime, so realistically, we're looking at June before the pole gets energized, by the time PG&E finishes up everything that they have to do. And then once they energize the pole, they will take down the old poles. It's going to happen over a 2-day period. There's too much work for them to do in one setting. And then once the old poles come down, the contractor will come back, resurface, put down all the new striping. So right now the lights are on recall. We're working with the contractor to have them put temporary cameras up on the old poles to bypass the recall, to help traffic move through that intersection when. You okay? Oh, is it raining? Is that what it is? I was like, why has everybody stopped talking?
It's so wet out there.
So, we're really waiting on PG&E now. The contract is at 95%. As soon as they're done putting up the light poles, they're going to demob from the site until PG&E has completed their work. Then once they energize the pole, the contractor will come back, resurface, restripe, and then we should be done.
Is most of the median work done now?
Yeah. They're putting in irrigation now, and they're just going to finish up with the
They
landscaping.
move pretty quickly.
And then separate from that, we were successful in getting a Safe Route to School grant for I don't recall if Ryan talked about this or not at the last meeting. We submitted a Safe Route to School grant to MTC, the Article 3 TDA grant for, I think it was $175,000 to do the 4 locations for the flashing beacons, 2 on Pleasant Hill Road, 1 at the Salvation Army, and then the last one is a highly coveted one that's been in the CIP for 2 cycles now, and that is on Westover.
Oh, yeah.
So
Strand and Westover, that area.
those 4 will be bundled together as one project. So we were not awarded the full amount. We were awarded $125,000. But now that, once that paperwork goes through, we can start moving forward on the design for that project.
Good.
So that's some good news.
On the Contra Costa Boulevard project, what has the feedback been from the community? For a while, there was a concern about through traffic.
Well,
Is that still a concern?
I haven't, I haven't seen too many asked P Hills recently, the concern has been the loss of the free right turn pocket.
Right.
The loss of the free right turn pocket headed southbound on CCB at Taylor and then headed eastbound on Taylor to turn southbound on CCB. So the traffic warrants did not warrant, we talked about this at the last meeting. When you're heading southbound on CCB, there's not going to be a dedicated right turn pocket. The traffic warrants didn't have the traffic volumes to warrant that. But coming down Taylor eastbound, there will be a dedicated right lane to go right onto CCB. It's just not going to be that 50-mile-an-hour free right turn. The reason that is not open right now is because the old traffic pole is sitting in that lane.
Right.
And so we cannot open that up as the right turn pocket until we take the pole down. But once that pole comes down and we resurface and restripe,
Right.
and that's why we're putting the cameras on the old poles, because I had my electrician out there yesterday. They don't have a good line of sight to put the cameras on the new poles to line up with the striping. So we don't want to put them up and then not have it work, take them down and put them on the old poles. We're going to put the cameras up on the old poles to make sure that they can see the traffic in the striping alignment that's there right now. And hopefully that'll at least keep traffic going. Since the lights are on recall, we don't want to leave them on recall for 2 months.
Thanks.
And then the only other really little update I have is, I've been working with the county to change the timing on the signal at Civic and Taylor. So if you're sitting on Civic and one car turns, it signals, and they've been out there once already to change the timing. I talked to them again today to have them come out again today to work on that timing again, to keep more cars going down Taylor until there's a bigger queue on Civic.
It's that 15-minute rush to all park at College Park, the
Yeah.
back way to College Park High School.
Yeah. So the county's working on that. And I don't know if you guys were aware or not, but there was a traffic accident today down at, right before we came in at In-N-Out.
Oh,
And so the light is down, the signal is down, or it was down before we came into this meeting. That is, just to remind everybody, that's a Caltrans signal. The city responded to put out stop signs, but Caltrans, it's their signal, it's their intersection. They're gonna have to go out there.
Did they
So-
knock the light down? Or did-
I wasn't out there, so I don't really know.
I also was not.
I don't know. I just know the signal went dark based on the accident. So Caltrans is gonna have to deal with that. If you live that way, go a different way.
By the golf course.
But we did respond. We put out stop signs for PD. PD responded, but it's ultimately a Caltrans signal, so we don't have any jurisdiction over what they do out there. That's my update.
Okay. Any more stuff?
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much, Anne. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll now move on to item 11, which is Commissioner and Liaison Reports. Nothing from Measure K?
I made my report to the city council. That's it. Well, we're done until the fall, I think.
Right, okay. Fine. Okay, is there any other points anybody
quick-
wishes to raise?
Just a quick observation. The Oak Park Bridge, we've talked about this a few times, which I know was seismically done, but it's getting that bump over the bridge is getting harder and harder. It seems like it's
Which bridge on the park are you talking about? Canal Trail or over 680?
over 680. That bridge, when you go over it, it's, when you're going towards,
On the east side?
Poets Corner, yeah. Yeah, you go, say you're going down Buskirk, take a right on Oak Park.
Oh, the
And-
Caltrans top.
Yeah, yeah, it's getting more and more bumpy. Like my shocks aren't loving it, but
I will submit online maintenance request to Caltrans.
check it out yourself. I
No, I
mean,
disagree. I remember when they built it, because when they first built it, when they were building it, we had concerns that it wasn't ADA compliant, so then they made that big shelf. Right, so they gave it the 2% crosswalk. It is literally like a shelf.
Yeah,
It's called differential settlement.
Yeah.
my four-wheel drive does well. My little guy doesn't do so well.
I'll put something in Caltrans website,
Okay.
but it is literally that is their little piece.
Yeah, it's, go there a lot.
Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Good.
Yeah. That's their engineer.
That's all.
Anyone, anything else that was to
I
raise?
actually got one more little update I could give you. You may or may not be aware that Caltrans has a project to do ramp metering in Contra Costa County and beyond. Yes, no?
I've heard about it.
So in any event, they were going to skip over Pleasant Hill for the CARMs, that calibrated automated ramp metering system, because they ran out of budget. But it looks like they got some extra money and they're considering doing one project at Oak and the Oak Park Boulevard Buskirk intersection. So that on-ramp that's across from back 40. So it's in the design phase right now. So that is one ramp that we're considering ramp metering on as part of the Caltrans CARMs project. What they're looking at is taking the 2 lanes on Oak
Mhm.
down to 1 lane with a bike lane. Because the traffic warrants don't really indicate that we need 2 lanes to accommodate the storage that we need for the ramp metering. It's very early design phases, but if you hear anything about it, that is the one ramp in the city that they're talking about doing their CARMs project on.
That's northbound 680 on ramp.
You'd be getting you'd be the on-ramp for northbound 680, correct? Right across from the 7-Eleven. Is it still a
Gonna
7-Eleven?
do this thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get on there,
Okay.
yeah.
Yes. So very early stages, but that is one project that Caltrans is working with CCTA and the design consultant to bring that one ramp in.
You could use that one. No one needs it.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so there being no further business for today, the meeting is adjourned and we'll meet again on May the 6th, 4 p.m. Thank you very much, everybody, for your contribution.
Thank you.